Someone has hurt you, and you can't let it go. They were wrong. You were right. Anyone would be angry in your situation. The anger feels justified, even protective, like it's keeping you from being hurt again. But here's what's actually happening. This fire you're carrying is burning only you. It steals your sleep, poisons your peace, makes you tense at the mention of their name. The anger you thought was protecting you has become the cage. Tonight, you discover the key. 2,600 years ago, a teacher named Shariputra, the wisest disciple after the Buddha himself, stood before people carrying your exact burden. That day, he revealed 5 ways to transform anger immediately, not by forgiving them or pretending nothing happened, but by shifting where you place your attention right now. Each way uses one unforgettable image: finding clean cloth in a pile of garbage, clearing algae to reach pure water beneath, kneeling to drink from water pooled in an animal's footprint, a dying traveler saved by a stranger's compassion, jumping into a crystal-clear lake. 5 ancient ways, each perfect for a different kind of hurt, all leading to the same freedom. You have more tools than you realized. If it feels right, share where you're listening from tonight. Settle somewhere comfortable and let your breath slow. The first story begins now. In the early morning, just as the sun rises and casts long shadows across the path, a monk is walking along the outskirts of a village, wearing only a patchwork robe. This wasn't an ornate robe made of fine cloth. It was pieced together from scraps, from fabric that others had discarded, from remnants that most people wouldn't give a second glance. This was part of his practice, you see, to rely on what the world threw away, to find value in what others considered worthless. As he walks, he passes a garbage pile. Not the kind of garbage we're used to today, neatly bagged and hidden in bins, but an open pile of refuse on the edge of town, where people threw everything they no longer wanted. The smell hits him first, overwhelming, nauseating, the stench of decay and waste. Excrement, urine, rotting food scraps, things too foul to name. Most people would hold their breath, avert their eyes, hurry past as quickly as possible. But this monk pauses, because among all that filth, among all that refuse and decay, he notices something. One piece of cloth, still intact, relatively clean, lying on top of the pile, but somehow untouched by the surrounding waste. The cloth isn't magnificent. It's just a simple piece of fabric, but it's whole, and it's clean enough to be useful. Now here's where the teaching begins to unfold. The monk doesn't focus on the overwhelming garbage pile. He doesn't stand there thinking about how disgusting it all is, how terrible it smells, how repulsive the sight. His attention goes entirely to that one piece of clean cloth. He steps closer, carefully, mindfully, and picks it up with one hand. He takes the other end and stretches the cloth out, examining it fully in the morning light. He checks for tears, for stains he might have missed, for any damage that would make it unusable. The cloth passes his inspection. It's genuinely clean, genuinely useful, genuinely worth taking. So he folds it carefully and takes it home with him. Later that day, he washes it thoroughly, cleaning away any trace of where it came from. Then he sews it into his patchwork robe, where it becomes part of what sustains his practice, part of what keeps him warm, part of what allows him to continue walking the path. That one piece of cloth, rescued from the garbage pile, serves him well. He didn't take the garbage home. He didn't dwell on the filth. He didn't stand there cataloguing everything that was wrong with that pile. He simply took what was useful and left the rest exactly where it was, in the garbage, not in his life, not in his robe, not carried home to contaminate what was clean. This is the teaching Shariputra gave for the first kind of person who hurts you. Someone whose behavior toward you is mostly unkind, mostly hurtful, mostly harmful, but who occasionally, perhaps rarely, says something genuinely kind, or true, or helpful. Their actions create pain for you. They're unreliable, dismissive, neglectful, or actively cruel in what they do. But every once in a while, they speak a kind word. They offer genuine encouragement. They give feedback that's actually helpful. They say something true that you needed to hear. The natural human response is to reject it all. Too little, too late, we say. One kind word doesn't make up for everything else. They don't really mean it. If they cared, their actions would match their words. We engage in wholesale rejection. If they're mostly bad, then everything they offer must be contaminated, must be worthless, must be refuse. And this feels like we're protecting ourselves, doesn't it? It feels like we're maintaining good boundaries, like we're not being fooled, like we're seeing clearly. But actually, we're the ones who suffer when we can't receive even the occasional, genuine kindness that appears. Here's what most people don't realize about this kind of rejection. When you refuse to take the clean cloth because it was surrounded by garbage, you're not punishing the person who hurt you. They probably don't even notice. What you're doing is keeping yourself in a state of absolute deprivation, standing beside something useful while insisting you have nothing. Your anger becomes a wall that keeps out not just harm, but also the rare moments of genuine help that appear. The teaching Shariputra offered is radically different. He's not asking you to pretend the garbage pile doesn't exist. He's not suggesting you ignore the harmful actions or make excuses for them. He's certainly not saying you should gather up the whole pile and carry it home. What he's teaching is this: when you see clean cloth in the garbage, take it. Examine it carefully. Make sure it's genuinely clean. And if it is, take it home. Wash it. Use it. Leave the garbage where it belongs. This is strategic wisdom, not naivety. You're not being fooled when you take what's genuinely useful. You're being wise. You're gathering what helps you and leaving what harms you. The person who hurt you doesn't get to determine whether you benefit from the rare true thing they said. You get to decide that. Think about your difficult boss for a moment. The one whose management style makes you dread Monday mornings. They micromanage every detail of your work, rarely offer praise, create a stressful environment where everyone walks on eggshells. Team morale is low. People are updating their resumes. You've thought about leaving more times than you can count. This is the garbage pile, the toxic behavior, the harsh criticism, the atmosphere of fear they've created. But one day, in a meeting, they give you genuinely constructive feedback. Not the usual nitpicking or vague criticism, but actual helpful insight into your work. Something specific you could implement that would genuinely improve what you're doing. Or they acknowledge something you did well in front of the whole team, and you can tell it's sincere, not manipulation. Your immediate reaction might be to dismiss it. One decent comment doesn't change the fact that they're terrible. What do they want from me now? This doesn't make up for how they treated me last week. All of which might be completely true. But here's the practice. Pause and examine that feedback, like the monk examined the cloth. Set aside everything else for just a moment. Look at this specific piece of feedback on its own merit. Is it actually helpful? Is it true? Could implementing it genuinely improve your work? If the answer is yes, if this is genuinely clean cloth among the garbage, then take it. Use that feedback. Let it improve your skills. This doesn't mean you're suddenly loyal to your terrible boss. It doesn't mean you're staying in the toxic job. It doesn't mean you've forgiven their pattern of harmful behavior. It just means you're taking what's useful to you and leaving the rest. When you eventually leave that job, and you leave with the skills that feedback helped you develop. You've washed the cloth, sewn it into your professional capabilities, and you carry it forward into the next opportunity. The garbage pile stays behind with them, but the clean cloth comes with you. Or think about a parent whose presence in your life has been complicated. Years of emotional neglect, of not being there when you needed them, of criticism instead of support, of their own struggles, overwhelming their ability to truly see you. This is painful to carry, and the pain is real, and your feelings about it are completely valid. But occasionally, maybe rarely, they express love in their limited way. They say they're proud of you. They share a piece of wisdom from their own life that actually lands as helpful. They show up to something important when you didn't expect them to. One kind word in a sea of absence. The anger in you might immediately reject it. Where was this when I was 10 years old and needed it? Where was this pride when I was struggling in school? One appearance doesn't heal years of not showing up. And you're right, it doesn't. The practice here isn't to pretend those years of neglect didn't happen. It's not to suddenly trust them or to believe they've fundamentally changed. It's not to give them credit they haven't earned. The practice is simply this: that moment of expressed love, that one kind word, that piece of wisdom they shared. Was it real? If it was genuinely real, even if it was just one piece of clean cloth in years of garbage, you can take it. You can let that one moment of pride touch you without it obligating you to a relationship you can't sustain. You can use that piece of wisdom without pretending the wisdom was always available. Taking the clean cloth doesn't erase the garbage pile or excuse its existence. It simply means you're not leaving yourself completely empty-handed when something real appears. This matters because otherwise you build a wall so thick that even genuine care can't reach you anymore. You become so defended against their inconsistency that you can't recognize the rare consistency when it shows up. And that's not freedom. That's a different kind of prison. Or consider a friendship that's been draining you. They're unreliable. They've betrayed your confidence more than once. They take far more than they give, and the relationship feels unbalanced and exhausting. You might already be in the process of pulling back, of setting firmer boundaries, maybe even of ending the friendship entirely. But then they do something genuinely thoughtful. They remember a detail from months ago that mattered to you. They offer encouragement at exactly the right moment. They show up to help you with something when you didn't expect it. One piece of clean cloth in 3 years of garbage. You can acknowledge that moment without it changing your decision about the friendship. Thank you for remembering that was important to me. You can say that sincerely while still recognizing this friendship isn't sustainable. Tomorrow you might still need to end it, to protect your own well-being, to stop the pattern of disappointment. But today you received what was genuinely offered, what was actually real. This prevents you from becoming so hardened that you can't recognize authentic care anywhere. It keeps your discernment sharp. You're not rejecting everything. You're carefully examining what's offered and taking only what's truly clean. Now let's talk about what actually happens in your body when you practice this versus when you don't. When someone who usually hurts you says something kind and you automatically reject it, notice what happens physically. Your chest tightens. Your jaw clenches. Your shoulders rise up toward your ears. Your breathing becomes shallow. This is your body in defensive mode, armored against potential harm, unable to distinguish between actual garbage and clean cloth. But when you pause, examine, and consciously take what's genuinely useful, something different happens. There's a moment of softening. Your breath deepens slightly. The tightness in your chest eases just a fraction. This isn't because the person suddenly became trustworthy, or because the relationship magically healed. It's because you've exercised agency. You chose what to take and what to leave, rather than being controlled by blanket rejection or desperate acceptance. This practice is also nothing like toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing, and it's important to understand the difference. Toxic positivity would say, just focus on the positive. They said something nice, so forget about the bad stuff. That's denial. That's pretending the garbage pile doesn't exist or doesn't matter. The monk in our story never pretended the garbage pile wasn't disgusting. He saw it clearly, acknowledged its existence, and simply chose not to carry it home. Spiritual bypassing would say, everything happens for a reason. This person's cruelty is teaching you something. Be grateful for the lesson. That's making excuses for harm. The teaching here makes no such claim. The garbage is still garbage. The harmful behavior is still harmful. You're not grateful for it. You're not learning to accept it. You're simply learning to identify and take the rare, useful thing while leaving the harm untouched. Here's another thing that happens over time with this practice. It changes how you see people in general. Not just the person who hurt you, but everyone. You start noticing that very few people are entirely garbage or entirely treasure. Most people are complicated mixtures. Your critical eye becomes more nuanced. You can appreciate someone's genuine kindness in one area while being clear-eyed about their limitations in another. This sophistication of vision is liberating because you're no longer trapped in the exhausting work of categorizing everyone as all good or all bad. So how do you actually live this practice? How do you become the monk with the wisdom to take clean cloth and leave garbage behind? Here's how it works in your daily life. First, you have to recognize the situation when it's happening. Someone whose behavior generally hurts you says something kind, and you notice your immediate defensive reaction. You feel yourself wanting to dismiss it, to reject it, to protect yourself by not letting it in. Just notice this without judgment. Name what's happening internally. They said something kind, and I want to dismiss it because of their usual unkindness. Simply naming this creates a pause, a space between stimulus and response, a moment where you can choose instead of just react. Second, examine what they actually said or offered, like the monk examining the cloth. Take it out of the context of everything else for just this moment. Separate the specific thing they said from the pile of garbage it came from. Ask yourself honestly, is this particular thing helpful, true, or kind? Not, are they generally good to me? Because we already know the answer is probably no. But is this specific piece of feedback useful? Is this particular word of encouragement genuine? Is this bit of wisdom actually true? If it's manipulative, if there are strings attached, if it's backhanded or passive-aggressive, if it's designed to control or confuse you, that's not clean cloth. That's garbage disguised as cloth, and you leave it in the pile. But if it's genuinely helpful, if it's honestly kind, if it's simply true, that's the clean cloth worth taking. Here's where people often get confused. They worry that taking the clean cloth means they're being naive or letting their guard down. But notice what the monk did. He examined the cloth thoroughly before taking it. He didn't just grab whatever was on top of the pile and assume it was fine. He checked it, tested it, made sure it was genuinely useful. You're doing the same thing. You're not blindly accepting everything they offer. You're carefully discerning what's actually clean from what only looks clean on the surface. Third, if you determine it's genuine, receive it simply and without attachment. This is crucial. You take the cloth, but you don't make it mean more than it means. If they gave you one helpful piece of feedback, you say, "Thank you, I'll work on that," and you actually do work on it. But you don't suddenly think, "They've changed," or "Maybe they're not so bad after all." One kind word doesn't erase a pattern of unkindness. One piece of clean cloth doesn't make the garbage pile disappear. You take this moment as exactly what it is. This moment, this one thing, nothing more and nothing less. This is the washing of the cloth. You're cleaning it of expectations, of false hope, of anything that would contaminate it. You're receiving what was genuinely offered without using it to build a fantasy that their whole nature has transformed. Fourth, you actively leave the garbage behind. This is as important as taking the cloth. The unkind actions, the pattern of harm, the overall toxicity, all of that stays with them, not in your heart. You don't pick it up and carry it home just because the cloth was in the pile. This is boundaries without bitterness. I can take your helpful feedback and still maintain firm limits on how you treat me. I can receive this kind word and still protect myself from your harmful behavior. I can acknowledge this genuine moment and still leave this relationship if it's destroying my well-being. The clean cloth doesn't obligate you to relationship with the garbage pile. It doesn't mean you owe them gratitude for their overall pattern. It doesn't mean you stay in harm's way because occasionally something good appears. It simply means you've gathered what helps you and left what harms you exactly where it belongs. Fifth, actually use what you've gathered. This is sewing the cloth into your robe. If the feedback was genuinely helpful, implement it in your work. If the word of encouragement was real, let it strengthen you for the challenges ahead. If the piece of wisdom was true, integrate it into how you understand your life. The clean cloth becomes part of your practice, part of what sustains you, part of your actual life. It's not theoretical, it's woven into the fabric of who you're becoming. And here's what's beautiful. Once you've washed it and sewn it in, you can barely tell where it came from. It's just part of your robe now, just part of your capabilities, just part of your wisdom. What transforms over time is your relationship with this kind of hurt. You develop real discernment, the ability to distinguish clean cloth from garbage disguised as cloth from actual refuse. You become free from all or nothing thinking. You don't need people to be perfectly good to receive anything from them, and you don't need them to be perfectly evil to protect yourself from them. You can hold complexity. They're harmful in these specific ways, and occasionally helpful in this specific way. Both can be true simultaneously. This sophisticated understanding liberates you from the exhausting binary of all good or all bad. Most importantly, you're no longer controlled by their inconsistency. When they're unkind, you're not devastated because you weren't depending on them for all your nourishment. When they're occasionally kind, you're not trapped because you're only taking what's genuinely useful, not swallowing the whole pile out of desperate need. You become the wise monk, walking past garbage piles with clear eyes, not pretending they don't exist, not denying they smell terrible, not making up stories about how they're actually beautiful. Just seeing clearly what's there, taking what's genuinely useful, and leaving the rest behind without a second thought. This is freedom. The person who hurt you doesn't get to make you reject even the rare good they offer. The garbage pile doesn't get to contaminate the genuinely clean cloth. You're no longer a victim of their inconsistency. You're a discerning practitioner who knows exactly what to carry and what to leave behind. And the anger, the burning you felt at the beginning of this teaching, it transforms when you realize you have this choice. You don't have to carry the whole garbage pile to prove they were wrong. You don't have to reject everything to maintain your boundaries. You can be both protected and receptive, both wise and open, both discerning and free. The monk walked past that garbage pile and continued his journey, lighter, warmer, more equipped for the path ahead. One piece of clean cloth made his practice possible that day, and he never once thought about the garbage he left behind. The second way begins on a day when the heat is almost unbearable. Imagine the kind of day where the sun beats down relentlessly, where heat rises from the ground in shimmering waves, where every step feels heavy and your clothes cling to your skin. And a person is walking through this heat, suffering. Their body is covered in sweat. Their throat is parched. Their skin feels sticky and uncomfortable. They're desperate for relief, for something to cool them down, for any escape from this oppressive temperature. Then they see it, not far from the village, a lake. But as they get closer, their heart sinks a little. The surface of the lake is completely covered with thick green algae. Floating grass and weeds create a carpet across the top, making the water look uninviting, even repulsive. Someone else might look at this lake and think, this water isn't usable, or I'll keep searching for something better. The surface appearance suggests the whole thing is contaminated, spoiled, not worth the effort. But this person understands something important. They know that surface appearance isn't the whole truth. They've learned that what you see on top doesn't always reflect what lies beneath. So without much hesitation, they make a decision. They jump into the lake. As soon as they hit the water, they use their hands to push aside the algae, to clear away the floating grass and weeds. And underneath, cool, clear, pure water. The surface growth hadn't contaminated what was below at all. It was just sitting on top, a layer that could be moved aside with a little effort. The person drinks deeply from this pure water beneath the algae. They bathe completely, letting the coolness wash over their overheated body. The relief is immediate and total. The heat that was making them suffer dissipates. The thirst that was tormenting them disappears. The discomfort that seemed overwhelming just moments ago is replaced by complete refreshment. They emerge from that lake renewed, grateful they didn't judge it solely by its surface, glad they did the small work of clearing aside what was covering the good water beneath. This is the teaching for the second kind of person who causes you pain, someone whose words are rough, critical, harsh, maybe even hurtful, but whose actions consistently demonstrate genuine care. The disconnect can be confusing and painful. What they say stings, cuts, makes you want to pull away. But what they do tells a completely different story. They show up when you need help. They follow through on commitments. Their behavior reveals investment in your well-being, even when their words suggest otherwise. The natural human response to harsh words is to focus entirely on them. When someone speaks to you roughly, criticizes you sharply, or delivers feedback without any cushioning, you feel wounded. The words sting. They replay in your mind. You might lie awake thinking about what they said and how it made you feel. And in that wounded state, it becomes almost impossible to see their caring actions. The algae on the surface is so off-putting that you never discover the pure water beneath. But here's what makes this situation different from the first way we explored. With the garbage pile and the clean cloth, the person's actions were the problem, and their words were occasionally helpful. Here, it's reversed. Their words are the problem, but their actions consistently show care. This pattern often comes from cultural or generational differences in how people express love and concern. Some people grew up in environments where verbal affection was considered weakness, or where directness was valued over gentleness. Others experienced such hardship that they learned to hide vulnerability behind rough exteriors. Still, others simply never developed the skill of articulating care in words, even though they feel it deeply and demonstrate it constantly through what they do. Understanding this context matters because it helps you stop taking their harsh delivery personally. Their inability to speak gently isn't about you or your worthiness of gentle treatment. It's their limitation, their unhealed place, their missing skill. When you understand this, the algae becomes less offensive because you recognize it's just what grows on their particular lake. It's not a judgment on whether you deserve clean water. Shariputra's teaching here is clear. Don't be deceived by the surface. Do the work of pushing aside the harsh words to reach the genuine care beneath. Like jumping into the algae-covered lake, this requires a little effort on your part. You have to be willing to look past immediate surface impressions to see what's actually there. But the refreshment you find, the real care, the consistent support, the demonstrated love, makes that small effort worthwhile. Think about a parent who never learned to say, "I love you," or "I'm proud of you." Instead, when you share your career plans, they say, "Why are you wasting time on that?" When you make a decision they don't understand, they call it stupid. When you express emotion, they tell you you're being too sensitive. These words land like blows. They hurt. They make you feel unseen, uncared for, maybe even unloved. But then look at what they actually do. They show up to every important event in your life, even when it's inconvenient. When you're struggling financially, help appears without you having to ask. They call to check in regularly, even if the conversations are awkward. When you're in crisis, sick, heartbroken, facing real difficulty, they drop everything to be there. They've sacrificed their own comfort for your well-being more times than you can count. The practice here is learning to respond to the action truth rather than the word harshness. When they say, "Why are you doing that job?" you could hear it as criticism and respond defensively. Or you could hear beneath it, they're worried about your security, your stability, your future. The delivery is terrible, yes, like thick algae covering the lake, but underneath is genuine concern, which is a form of love. So you might respond, "I know you want me to be secure. Thank you for caring about that." You're replying to what's beneath the harsh words, not to the words themselves. This doesn't mean their harsh words don't hurt. The algae is real. You're not pretending it's not there or that it's pleasant. You feel the sting of criticism, the pain of harsh delivery, but you're choosing not to let that surface layer block you from the care that exists underneath. You're doing the small work of clearing aside the algae to reach the pure water of their demonstrated love. Or consider a mentor or teacher whose feedback feels brutal. They tell you this work is sloppy without any softening preamble. You're not thinking clearly here, stated as blunt fact, not gentle suggestion. You can do better than this. No praise sandwich, no cushioning, just direct assessment. Every session with them leaves you feeling raw, exposed, maybe even inadequate. But look at what they actually do. They invest hours reviewing your work when they could be doing other things. They open doors for you, make introductions, advocate for your advancement to people who matter. When you need guidance, they're consistently available. They give you opportunities that others don't receive. Their actions reveal that they believe in your potential and are invested in your growth, even though their words feel harsh and their delivery lacks warmth. The practice is recognizing that the criticism is harsh because they care about your excellence. If they didn't care, they wouldn't invest the time. If they didn't see your potential, they wouldn't bother with detailed feedback. The bluntness is their communication style, the algae on the lake, not a measure of their actual investment in you. You can take the feedback seriously without taking the tone personally. This work is sloppy, becomes information you use to improve rather than a wound you carry. You've cleared aside the harsh delivery to access the genuine guidance beneath. Or think about a friend whose tongue is sharp to the point of rudeness. In front of others, they might say, "That outfit doesn't work," or "You're making a mistake," without any sugar coating. When you're venting about a problem, they interrupt with, "Stop complaining and do something." Their words can feel unsupportive, even unkind, especially when delivered publicly or at vulnerable moments. Yet watch what they do. When someone talks badly about you behind your back, this friend defends you fiercely. At 2 a.m, when you call in genuine crisis, they answer and show up. They've proven their loyalty through years of consistent presence. They tell you hard truths that no one else will say, which sometimes is exactly what you need, even if it's uncomfortable to hear. Their actions demonstrate a depth of friendship that their sharp words might make you miss if you're only listening to the surface. The practice is valuing the depth over the surface. Yes, their delivery is rough. The algae is thick on this lake. But the loyalty beneath, the consistency of showing up, the willingness to tell truth instead of comfortable lies, this is the pure water you'd miss if you only judged by how things sounded. You might even say to them directly, "I know you care," even when your words are rough, which acknowledges both the algae and the water beneath, and sometimes helps them learn to express care more gently over time. Now let's talk about how you actually live this practice in your daily life. How do you become the person who jumps into algae-covered lakes because you understand what lies beneath? First, when harsh words land, let yourself feel the sting. Don't suppress it or pretend it doesn't hurt. The algae is unpleasant. Acknowledge that reality. Name what's happening. Their words are rough, or that delivery was harsh, or what they said stung. This naming is important because it keeps you honest about the surface reality while preparing you to look beneath it. You're not pretending the algae is beautiful or pleasant. You're seeing it clearly for what it is, and then choosing to look deeper. Here's what happens in your body when you do this naming. The hurt doesn't disappear, but something shifts. Instead of spiraling into, "They don't care about me," or "I must not matter to them," you simply register, "Those words were delivered harshly." This keeps the hurt from expanding into a story about your worth or their feelings for you. The algae stays algae, unpleasant surface growth, instead of becoming evidence of contaminated water all the way through. Second, deliberately shift your attention from what they said to what they actually do. This is the movement from surface to depth, from algae to water. Ask yourself, if I were deaf and could only observe their actions toward me, what would I know about how they feel. When your parent criticizes your choices, but drives 3 hours to help you move into a new apartment, the action speaks care. When your mentor's feedback stings, but they spend their Saturday reviewing your work, the action speaks investment. When your friend's words are blunt, but they show up in crisis without being asked, the action speaks loyalty. Often what you discover is that their actions have been speaking care all along, but the harsh words were so loud you couldn't hear what the actions were saying. This is why the shift of attention matters. You're choosing to listen to the full message instead of only the uncomfortable part. This practice also reveals something profound about how we measure care in relationships. Many of us have been taught that words are the primary currency of affection. If someone can't say, "I love you," we question whether they feel it. But some of the deepest care in human life is expressed entirely through presence and action. The parent who works double shifts so you can go to college might never say they're proud, but every early morning they wake up for that shift is saying it. The mentor who tears apart your work is saying, "You matter enough for me to invest in making you excellent." The friend with the sharp tongue is saying, "I care enough to give you truth, even when it's uncomfortable." Third, practice translating the harsh words into their underlying meaning. This is the actual work of clearing aside the algae. When they say, "This is sloppy work," hear beneath it, "I know you're capable of better, and I care about your development." When they say, "That's a stupid decision," hear, "I'm afraid you'll get hurt, and I don't know how to express that fear gently." When they say, "You're too sensitive," hear, "I don't know how to handle emotions well, and your expression of feeling makes me uncomfortable." This translation isn't making excuses for them, or pretending their harsh delivery is okay. The algae is still algae, and rough words still sting. But you're choosing to focus on what they're actually trying to communicate beneath their poor verbal skills. You're pushing aside the surface layer to reach what matters: the care, the concern, the investment that their actions consistently demonstrate. Fourth, respond to the depth rather than the surface. This is where the practice becomes visible in your actual interactions. When they ask harshly, "Why are you wasting time on that?" instead of defending yourself against the criticism, you might say, "I know you worry about my stability. I appreciate that you care." You're acknowledging the concern beneath the harsh question rather than arguing with the words on the surface. This response often surprises them because you're hearing what they haven't learned to say directly. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, this depth response gradually teaches them better communication. When you respond to their underlying care, instead of their harsh delivery, they may slowly learn to express that care more directly. But even if their words never soften, you're benefiting because you're receiving the actual care that's available rather than being blocked by poor delivery. Watch how relationships transform when you consistently respond to depth instead of surface. That critical parent might still use the same rough words, but the sting lessens because you know what they really mean. Your conversations become less defensive because you're not arguing with their delivery. You're connecting with their actual message. The relationship becomes less exhausting because you're not constantly wounded by how they talk when you can see clearly how they care. Fifth, you can set boundaries on the words while still receiving the actions. This is sophisticated practice. You're not choosing between accepting everything or rejecting everything. You can say, "I hear that you care about me, and I also need you to speak to me more gently." Both things can be true, and both can be honored. You're essentially saying, "I'm grateful for the pure water beneath the algae, and I'm also asking if we can work on clearing some of this algae together." Sometimes they can meet you there, learning gradually to match their words to their actions. Sometimes they can't or won't, and you have to keep doing the work of clearing algae yourself if you want to access the care beneath. Either way, you've been honest about both the surface problem and the depth reality. What's important to understand is that this practice doesn't make you a doormat for verbal abuse. There's a difference between harsh delivery that comes from poor communication skills and deliberate cruelty designed to harm. The person whose words are rough, but whose actions consistently show care, is like the algae-covered lake, unpleasant surface, pure water beneath. But someone whose harsh words are meant to control, manipulate, or wound you, and whose actions don't demonstrate genuine care, that's different entirely. That's not algae on pure water. That's contamination all the way through. The practice is learning to tell the difference. Here's how you tell the difference. Look at the pattern of their actions over time, not just isolated moments. Do they consistently show up for you? Do they follow through on what matters? Do their behaviors demonstrate investment, even when their words are harsh? If yes, that's algae on pure water, worth the work of clearing aside. But if their actions are as harmful as their words, if they're unreliable and unkind in both word and deed, then you're looking at a different situation that requires different wisdom. Pay attention also to whether the harsh words escalate or remain consistent. Algae on a lake doesn't grow thicker each time you visit. It's just there, a surface, reality you learn to work with. But verbal abuse typically escalates over time, becoming more cutting, more personal, more designed to wound. That escalation is a sign you're dealing with something other than poor communication skills. The transformation that happens when you practice this way is profound. You become less wounded by delivery when you can see caring actions clearly. Harsh words still register. You're not numb to them, but they don't devastate you because you're reading the full message, not just the unpleasant wrapper it comes in. You develop a skill that serves you in every relationship, the ability to read beneath surface communication to what's actually being expressed through behavior. This makes you wiser in general because you're not fooled by smooth words that aren't backed by action, and you're not missing genuine care that's clumsily expressed. You become someone who can discern depth from surface across all areas of life. Most importantly, you're not deprived of care just because it's delivered roughly. Some people who love you most deeply will never learn to say it in ways that feel warm and gentle. Their care will always come with algae on top. That's their limitation, their struggle with verbal expression. But if you can't push aside that algae, you'll go through life thinking they don't care when actually they've been showing you care constantly through their actions. You'll die of thirst standing next to a lake full of pure water, simply because the surface didn't look inviting. This practice liberates you from that particular suffering. You learn to jump into algae-covered lakes with confidence because you know what lies beneath. You learn to hear, "Why are you doing that?" and know it often means, "I love you and worry about you." You learn to receive, "This work is sloppy," as, "I believe in your potential to do better." You learn to recognize "stop complaining" from a loyal friend as, "I care enough to tell you truth instead of comfortable lies." And something else happens too. Your own communication often improves. When you've learned to translate harsh words into underlying care, you become more conscious of your own delivery. You start noticing when you're putting algae on your own expressions of care, when your worry comes out as criticism or your fear as harshness. And you can choose to express the care more directly, to let your words match your actions, to clear your own algae so others don't have to work so hard to receive what you're actually offering. The person in the story emerged from that algae-covered lake completely refreshed. They weren't angry at the algae for existing or resentful that they had to clear it aside. They were just grateful for the pure water they found beneath, glad they didn't walk away based on surface appearance alone. They learned something valuable that day, that some of life's best refreshment comes from sources that don't look immediately appealing, and that a little effort to look beneath the surface is almost always worth it. You can become this person. When someone's words are harsh but their actions show care, you can learn to clear aside the algae and drink from the pure water beneath. Your relationship with them transforms from one of constant hurt at their delivery to one of deep appreciation for their demonstrated care. And you walk through life less wounded by surface roughness, more able to recognize and receive care in all its varied forms, more free from the prison of needing perfect delivery to recognize genuine love. The algae is still there. You're not pretending it's pleasant, but you've learned that it doesn't determine what lies beneath, and you've developed the wisdom to reach the refreshment that matters. The fourth way begins in a place far from any help. Picture a vast wilderness, empty land stretching in every direction, no villages visible on the horizon, no paths leading to safety. A person is traveling through this remote territory alone, making their way across difficult terrain with nothing but determination to reach their destination. They've been walking for days, far from anything familiar, with only the hope of reaching the next settlement to keep them moving forward. Then suddenly, everything changes. They fall sick. Not the mild discomfort of fatigue or minor illness, but desperate, debilitating sickness that drains every bit of strength from their body. Fever burns through them, making their skin hot and their thoughts confused. Weakness settles into their limbs until they can barely stand, let alone continue walking. Their legs give out and they collapse on the path, unable to take another step, unable to do anything but lie there suffering. As they lie there, the full horror of their situation becomes clear. They're alone, completely, utterly alone. The nearest village is days away, impossible to reach in this condition. No one knows where they are. No one is coming to look for them. No one even knows they need help. The realization settles over them like a weight crushing their chest. I will die here. This isn't dramatic thinking or fear exaggerating the situation. It's simple reality. Without help, without medicine, without even water or shelter, a person this sick, in this remote place, will not survive. They know it with absolute certainty. Death is approaching, not someday in the distant future, but soon, perhaps within hours or days. And there's nothing they can do about it. Despair floods through them. Not just fear, but the deep hopelessness of knowing your life is ending and being powerless to stop it. They look at the empty landscape around them and understand that this barren place will be where their story ends. No family to say goodbye to, no comfort in their final moments, just alone in the wilderness, dying slowly from sickness with no one to witness or care. The suffering isn't just physical now, it's the existential terror of abandonment, of facing death completely alone, of the world continuing on without even noticing you're gone. Time passes. How much? They can't tell. The fever makes everything blur together. They drift in and out of awareness, each time surfacing to the same terrible reality. Still alone, still dying, still no hope. They've stopped trying to move, stopped even hoping for rescue. They're just waiting now, enduring each moment of suffering as it comes, too weak to do anything else. Then, something changes. Through their fevered haze, they become aware of a presence. Someone is approaching on the same path. Another traveler, alone like they were, making their way through this same wilderness. This newcomer sees the sick person collapsed on the path, sees immediately how desperate the situation is, the fever, the weakness, the look of someone at death's door. And in that moment, they have a choice. They could keep walking. After all, stopping to help means risking their own journey, their own safety, their own supplies. The sick person is a stranger, no relation, no obligation. Many people, faced with this scene, would feel sympathy, but keep moving. It's not their problem, and they have their own concerns. But this traveler doesn't hesitate. They immediately kneel beside the sick person and reach out, taking their hand. "I will help you," they say simply. Just those 4 words, but in that moment they mean everything. The difference between death and life, between abandonment and care, between despair and hope. The compassionate traveler doesn't just speak comfort and move on. They act. They help the sick person to their feet, supporting their full weight since they can barely stand. Step by slow step, they guide them toward the nearest village. It takes hours, maybe a full day. Progress painfully slow with someone so weak. But the helper never wavers, never complains about the burden, never suggests leaving the sick person to manage alone. When they finally reach the village, the compassionate traveler doesn't consider their duty done. They find shelter for the sick person, a place to rest safely. They obtain medicine, whatever remedies the village healers recommend. They bring food, though the sick person can barely eat. They bring water for the fever. They provide everything needed for recovery, care, attention, resources, time. They stay through the worst of the illness, through the nights when fever rages, and the days when weakness makes even sitting up impossible. They tend to needs that are undignified and difficult. They offer presence when the sick person is delirious and frightened. They give of themselves completely to a stranger, asking nothing in return, simply because another human being was suffering and they could help. Because of this compassion, the sick person survives. Their life is saved by someone who had no obligation to save it, who gained nothing from the effort, who simply saw suffering and responded with immediate care. Days or weeks later, when the sick person has recovered enough to continue their journey, they understand with perfect clarity, without this compassionate stranger, they would have died alone in that wilderness. Every breath they take from that moment forward exists because someone chose compassion over convenience. Now here's where Shariputra's teaching becomes radical, almost shocking in what it asks. He says, "This is how you must see people who have been entirely unkind to you, not as the compassionate helper in this story, but as the sick traveler dying alone in the wilderness. The person who hurt you, who showed no kindness, who seemed entirely cruel, you must see them as desperately sick, dying from their own cruelty, needing help they don't even know to ask for." This is the hardest teaching of all 5 ways. The first 3 ways asked you to take clean cloth from garbage, to clear algae from water, to honor tiny kindness. Those are challenging, but at least there's something good to work with, some kindness, however small, to acknowledge. But this fourth way addresses the person who seems to have no kindness at all, someone whose actions, words, and heart all appear entirely cruel. These are the people who caused you deep harm without any apparent remorse, the ones who hurt you deliberately and showed no regret, the ones who, when confronted, denied or minimized, or even seemed to enjoy your pain. The seemingly unforgivable people whose cruelty felt intentional, whose harm felt personal, whose lack of conscience felt like proof of something fundamentally broken or evil in them. Everything in you might rebel against seeing them with compassion. They don't deserve compassion. Look what they did to me. This is asking too much. Why should I care about their suffering when they caused mine? Seeing them as sick feels like excusing what they did, like saying it wasn't their fault. The resistance is not only understandable, it feels morally right. Surely some people have forfeited the right to compassion through their choices. But here's what the teaching actually asks, and why. Shariputra isn't asking you to see cruel people with compassion because they deserve it. He's not asking you to excuse their behavior or pretend the harm wasn't real or severe. He's asking you to see their cruelty as their sickness, their suffering, their prison, their hell, because holding them in your mind as pure demons destroys your peace, not theirs. Think about what happens inside you when you hold absolute hatred for someone. You create an image of them in your mind as completely evil, as a monster without humanity, as someone deserving only punishment and suffering. This demon you've created haunts you. It appears in your thoughts when you're trying to work, in your dreams when you're trying to sleep, in your body as tension and anger when their name comes up. The demon grows larger than the actual person ever was, consuming your mental and emotional energy, stealing your peace years after you've physically separated from them. The irony is painful when you see it clearly. They may have moved on with their life completely, barely thinking about you or what they did. Meanwhile, you're carrying a demon-sized version of them in your mind that torments you daily. Your hatred of them hurts you infinitely more than it will ever hurt them. But the reality is that people capable of genuine cruelty are not free, happy, or at peace. They're sick. Their sickness manifests as the inability to feel appropriate remorse, the compulsion to harm others, the destruction of their own capacity for genuine connection. They live in a prison of their own making, unable to experience the deep satisfactions that make life meaningful, real intimacy, trusted friendships, inner peace, the clean conscience that allows restful sleep. Imagine actually living inside their skin, inside their mind, inside their experience. Always suspicious because you can't trust anyone, having destroyed trust too many times. Never vulnerable because vulnerability was beaten or shamed out of you long ago. Never at peace because there's always a need to control, to dominate, to defend against perceived threats. Always empty inside, trying desperately to fill that emptiness with power over others, with control, with the momentary satisfaction of making someone else feel small, but it never works. The emptiness remains, demanding more cruelty to feed it. This is not an enviable existence. This is not freedom or power or satisfaction. This is a hell realm of their own construction, and they're trapped in it. They're the sick traveler in the wilderness, except their sickness is invisible, and their wilderness is internal, and most tragically, they don't even know they're dying, because the sickness has destroyed their ability to recognize their own suffering. Consider someone who abused you deeply and shows no remorse, perhaps even denies it happened. The thought of having compassion for this person might feel like betraying yourself, like minimizing what they did, like siding with them against your own pain. So let's be absolutely clear first. Protect yourself completely from this person. Never have contact again if that's what you need. Pursue legal consequences if that's appropriate. Your anger at what they did is completely justified and healthy. None of this teaching asks you to suppress that anger or pretend the harm was acceptable. Now the difficult part. Can you see that their capacity for cruelty without remorse is their sickness, their prison? They've destroyed their own humanity to the point where they can harm others and feel nothing. They live in an internal wasteland where real connection is impossible, where trust doesn't exist, where they're fundamentally alone, even when surrounded by people they control through fear. They will likely die without ever knowing what it feels like to be genuinely loved, or to love genuinely, without ever experiencing the peace that comes from a clean conscience, without ever feeling truly safe or truly satisfied. This doesn't excuse what they did to you. The sickness doesn't make the harm less real. But seeing them as sick rather than as demons changes something crucial in your mind. The demon in your imagination has power. It haunts you, controls you through fear and hatred, keeps you imprisoned in anger long after you've escaped the actual person. But a sick human, trapped in the consequences of their own cruelty, doesn't have that same power over your peace. Or think about a friend who betrayed your trust fundamentally, shared your secrets maliciously, lied to your face repeatedly, perhaps even worked to undermine your relationships or reputation. When you confronted them, they showed no genuine remorse, just deflection or excuses, or even seemed to enjoy that they'd hurt you. Years have passed. You've cut them out of your life completely, but the anger still burns. You still rehearse what you should have said, still imagine scenarios where they face consequences, still feel your body tense when you hear their name. Their capacity for betrayal without remorse is their sickness. They've damaged their own ability to have genuine friendship with anyone. Every relationship they have now is probably shallow, transactional, marked by the same manipulation and betrayal that destroyed yours. They don't trust others because they themselves are untrustworthy, and they're not trusted by others for the same reason. They've created a life where deep friendship, the kind that sustains you through hard times, that knows you fully and loves you anyway, is impossible. That's not a life anyone would choose if they understood what they were giving up. It's a sickness, a poverty of being, a hell they carry with them everywhere. Your hatred of them doesn't add to their suffering. They're already living in the natural consequences of their choices. But your hatred definitely adds to your suffering. It keeps you bound to them emotionally years after you've separated physically. It poisons your ability to trust new friendships because you're always watching for signs of betrayal. The hatred you carry hurts you far more than it will ever hurt them. Or consider an authority figure, boss, teacher, coach, who was systematically cruel and seemed to enjoy wielding power over those beneath them. They humiliated people publicly, used their position to control and intimidate, created an environment of fear. You've left that situation, escaped their direct influence, but the memories still burn. Sometimes you wake up at night still processing what they did, still angry that they got away with it, still wishing they would face consequences. People who need to wield power cruelly are profoundly sick. They're so empty inside, so devoid of genuine self-worth, that dominating others is the only way they can feel significant. Real power, the kind that comes from competence, from genuine respect, from building others up, they'll never experience because they're too sick to build, only to destroy. They're dying from lack of genuine self-worth, trying desperately to fill that emptiness with control over others, but it never works. No amount of domination fills the void inside. They remain empty, remain sick, remain trapped in the need to keep dominating, to feel alive. The tragedy is that their sickness perpetuates itself. Each act of cruelty further destroys their capacity for genuine connection, which makes them feel more empty, which drives more cruelty. They're caught in a downward spiral, and most will never escape it because the sickness itself prevents them from recognizing they need help. Like the sick traveler in the wilderness, they're dying, but unlike that traveler, they can't even cry out for help because the illness has convinced them they're fine. So how do you actually practice this? The hardest of the 5 ways. First, don't skip past feeling the full weight of the harm they caused. This is crucial. They hurt you deeply, and that pain is real and valid and deserves to be felt fully. Let yourself be angry. Let yourself feel betrayed. Let yourself grieve what their cruelty cost you. The time, the trust, the innocence, the peace you had before they harmed you. Some days you'll need to be in that anger completely, and that's okay. Healing isn't linear. There's no timeline for when you should be over it. This teaching isn't asking you to bypass your pain or to rush to compassion before you've honored your own suffering. Take all the time you need here. The sick traveler teaching will still be available when you're ready for it. And you might never be ready for it with this particular person, and that's also okay. This teaching is an option, not an obligation. In fact, some spiritual teachers would say, you need to feel your anger fully before you can truly release it. Anger that's been suppressed or bypassed doesn't go away. It goes underground where it causes different kinds of damage. So honor your rage. Write letters you never send. Scream into pillows. Talk to therapists who can hold space for the full weight of what was done to you. This isn't wallowing in anger. It's allowing appropriate emotional processing of real harm. Second, when you're ready, whenever that might be, start noticing what holding absolute hatred does to you. Not what it does to them, but what it does to your own life. Does it disturb your sleep? Does it intrude into moments that should be peaceful? Does it consume mental energy you'd rather spend on things that matter to you? Does it poison your ability to trust or to open your heart to others? Ask yourself honestly, how much of my life force is being consumed by this hatred? Not in a judging way, just as honest inventory. If the answer is a lot, then you might be ready to explore this teaching, not for their sake, but for your own liberation. Pay attention to how often they appear in your thoughts uninvited, how much energy goes into imagining them suffering or finally understanding what they did. How many potentially peaceful moments are disrupted by sudden memories of their cruelty. This inventory isn't about making yourself feel bad for still being angry. It's about seeing clearly what the anger is costing you, so you can make an informed choice about whether you want to continue paying that price. Third, practice seeing their cruelty as the sickness that has destroyed their own capacity for fully human life. People capable of genuine cruelty have lost access to experiences that make life meaningful. They can't feel appropriate remorse, which means they can't make genuine amends and experience the relief of reconciliation. They can't be truly vulnerable, which means they can't experience real intimacy. They can't trust because they're fundamentally untrustworthy, which means they live in constant suspicion and isolation. Try to imagine actually living in their internal world, not to excuse them, but to understand the prison they're in. Always needing to control because you can never trust. Always empty inside, trying to fill it with domination or harm but never succeeding. Never at peace, never truly satisfied, never experiencing the deep contentment that comes from living with integrity. This is their hell, and unlike you, they can't escape it by physical separation because they carry it inside themselves, everywhere they go. Fourth, practice shifting how you hold them in your mind, from demon to sick human. The demon in your imagination is all-powerful, ever-present, capable of haunting you indefinitely. The sick human is pitiable, limited, already suffering the natural consequences of their choices. This shift doesn't require you to feel warm compassion toward them. It doesn't require you to wish them well or to hope for their healing. It's simply recognizing reality. They're sick humans, trapped in prisons of their own making, not all-powerful demons, with ongoing control over your peace. When they appear in your thoughts now, instead of spiraling into rage or fear, you can think, they're sick, I'm free, and move on. Fifth, choose your level of compassion on a spectrum, knowing that any point on that spectrum is better than absolute hatred. Full compassion might sound like, I genuinely wish they could heal from whatever made them capable of such cruelty. Minimal compassion might sound like, I see they're sick and I'm glad I'm away from them. Neutral might sound like, they're sick people living sick lives. That's their burden, not mine anymore. All of these are better than absolute hatred, which sounds like, they're pure evil, deserve only suffering, and I'll carry rage toward them forever. That last one chains you to them indefinitely. Even the most minimal compassion, just seeing their sickness without wishing them well, begins to free you. What transforms over time is this: hatred loosens its grip on your heart, not because you've forced it to, but because you've seen clearly that carrying demons in your mind creates ongoing suffering while seeing sick humans allows release. The person who hurt you shrinks back to human size in your memory, instead of looming as an outsized monster. This creates space in your mind for other things, for healing, for joy, for new relationships, for peace. Most importantly, you become free whether they ever change or not, whether they ever face consequences or not, whether they ever understand what they did or not. Your freedom doesn't depend on their transformation. It depends only on your willingness to stop carrying them as demons in your heart, and to see them instead as sick travelers dying in the wilderness of their own cruelty. They're in their own prison already. You don't have to join them there. The fifth way begins on another hot day, the kind that makes you desperate for relief. A person is walking under the blazing sun, their body covered in sweat, their clothes sticking uncomfortably to their skin. Every step feels heavy, the heat pressing down on them like a physical weight. Their throat is dry, their skin flushed and burning, and all they can think about is finding water, finding shade, finding anything that might offer escape from this relentless temperature. As they approach the village, something catches their eye. Not far ahead, a lake. But this isn't like the algae-covered lake from the second way. This lake is different. Immediately, obviously different. Even from a distance, they can see how beautiful it is. They move closer, drawn by what they're seeing. The water is perfectly clear, so clear you can see straight through to the bottom. See every stone on the lake bed. See how the light plays through the water. There's a quality to it that suggests sweetness, not just drinkable, but genuinely refreshing, the kind of pure water that tastes better than anything you could imagine. The lake bed itself is level, and even no hidden dangers lurking beneath the surface, no sudden drop-offs or sharp rocks, just smooth consistency all the way across. The banks of the lake are lush with vibrant green grass, soft and welcoming, the kind of grass that invites you to sit, to lie down, to rest. And surrounding the whole scene, fresh, beautiful trees, providing deep shade. Their leaves rustle gently in whatever breeze exists, creating dappled patterns of light and shadow on the water's surface. The entire setting is perfect, like it was designed specifically for this moment, for this person, for this need. There's nothing to fix here, nothing to work around, nothing to clear away or examine carefully or approach with caution. This lake is exactly what it appears to be: pure, clear, refreshing, safe, inviting. Everything about it says, come, rest, be refreshed. And the person doesn't hesitate. This is important. There's no calculation, no suspicion, no holding back. They simply remove their clothes, because there's nothing to hide from this purity, nothing to protect themselves from in this clear water. They don't test it first with a toe, or wonder if it's really as good as it looks. They trust what they're seeing because what they're seeing is trustworthy. And they jump in completely. The moment they hit the water, everything changes. Immediate relief, complete comfort. The coolness surrounds their overheated body, washing away the suffering of the heat in an instant. They drink deeply, and the water is as sweet as it looked, pure and satisfying in a way that goes beyond just quenching thirst. They bathe completely, letting the water touch every part of their body, holding nothing back from this refreshment. The suffering they were experiencing, the heat, the exhaustion, the desperate discomfort, all of it disappears. Not gradually, not with effort, but immediately upon entering the water. This is what complete kindness offers. Total refreshment, when you're willing to receive it fully. They emerge from the lake renewed, restored, grateful they didn't stand at the edge, calculating whether they deserve to enter, or worrying about what it might cost them. This is Shariputra's teaching for the fifth kind of person in your life. Someone who is thoroughly kind to you in every possible way, in their body, in their speech, in their mind. Their actions consistently demonstrate care. Their words build you up, encourage you, speak truth with gentleness. And their heart toward you is genuinely pure, wanting your well-being with no hidden agenda, no strings attached, no ulterior motives. This is the beautiful clear lake, kindness that's obvious, consistent, trustworthy, and completely available to you. You might think, well, of course, I'd receive that kind of kindness. This teaching seems obvious. Who wouldn't jump into a clear, beautiful lake? But the Buddha warns through Shariputra, even here, standing beside perfect refreshment, we find ways to create suffering for ourselves. Even when someone is entirely kind to us, we create barriers that keep us from fully receiving what they're offering. This is perhaps the most surprising teaching of the 5 ways. We expect to struggle with people who hurt us, but we don't expect to struggle with people who love us well. Yet this struggle is real and common and costs us dearly in missed connection, refused support, and rejected love. Watch how this happens in your own life. Someone is consistently good to you. They show up, they care, they're reliable and kind in every way you can measure. The lake is right there, clear and inviting. But instead of jumping in, you find reasons to stand at the edge. Unworthiness whispers, I don't deserve this kind of love. They're too good for me. If they really knew me, all my flaws and failures, they wouldn't be so kind. You're standing at a beautiful lake thinking you're too dirty to enter the pure water, when actually the water is there specifically to refresh you as you are. Suspicion creeps in. What do they want from me? No one is this kind without an agenda. They must want something eventually. This is too good to be true. You're looking at clear water and imagining hidden dangers that don't exist, searching for algae that isn't there, convinced that purity, this obvious, must be hiding something sinister beneath. Comparison wounds you. They're so much better than me. Their kindness highlights my inadequacy. I can never be as good, as generous, as emotionally healthy as they are. You're standing beside a lake that would refresh you completely, but instead of entering, you're measuring the distance between the clear water and your dusty self and feeling bad about the contrast. Jealousy poisons the gift. Why are they so happy all the time? It's not fair that they have their life together when I'm still struggling. I resent that they seem so at peace. The lake is beautiful, and you're angry at it for being beautiful instead of grateful that it's available to you. Fear of debt holds you back. If I accept this kindness, I'll owe them something I can't repay. I'll be forever indebted. I can't match their generosity, so I shouldn't accept it. You're refusing refreshment because you're calculating costs that don't exist, keeping score in a game they're not playing. Fear of loss paralyzes you. If I fully receive this and they leave, I'll be devastated. Better not to depend on them so completely. If I jump in all the way and someday the lake isn't here, I won't survive it. You're dying of thirst beside pure water because you're afraid of future thirst, suffering now to avoid potential suffering later. Each of these barriers is real in your mind, real in how it stops you from receiving. But none of them change the fact that the lake is there, clear and pure, offering complete refreshment if you're willing to jump in. The obstacles aren't in the water. They're in your head, your history, your fears, your calculations. Think about a friend who's been steadfast for years. They show up consistently, not just when it's convenient, but when it really matters. They remember what's important to you, celebrate your wins without jealousy, support you through losses without judgment. There's no drama with them, no games, no keeping score. Just genuine, reliable friendship, year after year. This is a clear lake standing right in front of you, but watch what your mind does. I'm not a good enough friend back. I don't call them enough. I forget to check in. I'm too wrapped up in my own problems. That's unworthiness keeping you from jumping in fully. Why are they so nice to me? Do they not have other friends? Is something wrong with them that they choose me? That's suspicion contaminating clear water. They're so much more together than I am. They never seem anxious or messy or struggling. That's comparison making you feel worse instead of letting their peace refresh you. But what if you just jumped in? What if when they showed up for you, you fully received their presence instead of minimizing it with, "Oh, you didn't have to come"? What if when they celebrated your achievement, you let it touch you instead of deflecting with, "It's not that big a deal"? What if when they offered support, you accepted it openly instead of insisting, "I'm fine, really"? The friendship would feel different immediately. Not because they'd change, the lake was already clear, but because you'd finally let yourself be refreshed by what was always available. You'd experience the full depth of connection that's been waiting for you all along, held back only by your refusal to receive it fully. Or think about a partner whose love is consistent and kind. They see your flaws clearly and love you anyway. They support your growth without trying to control your direction. Their words build you up. Their actions show care. Their heart toward you is generous and true. This is what you hoped for in relationship, what you maybe thought didn't really exist. But even here, standing in front of this clear lake, you might find yourself at the edge instead of in the water. I don't deserve this. They could do so much better than me. Why do they love me? There must be something wrong with them if they think I'm worth loving. They're more emotionally mature, more stable, more capable than I am. The imbalance is embarrassing. If I fully open my heart and they leave someday, I won't survive the loss. All of these thoughts are armor, protection against being hurt, but they also protect you from being loved. You're standing at the edge of the lake, burning up from heat, desperately needing the refreshment that's right there, and you're choosing thirst over risk. What would it mean to take off the armor, to enter the water completely? When they express love, receive it fully. Yes, I feel loved by you. Thank you. When they see you clearly, including your struggles, and stay, let that reality touch you instead of arguing with it. When they show care through action, accept it openly instead of keeping score of what you owe. Jump in completely, letting yourself be loved without reservation or calculation. Or consider a mentor who generously shares their wisdom and experience. They invest hours in your development without seeming to need anything back. They open doors, make introductions, advocate for you to people who matter. They genuinely want to see you succeed, even surpass them, with no apparent ego or competition. The clear lake is right there. Wisdom offered freely, support given generously, guidance available consistently. But you might still find yourself standing at the edge. Why would someone this accomplished invest in me? I'll never be as wise or successful as they are. What's the point? I can never adequately repay this level of investment. I resent needing their help. Why can't I figure this out on my own? These barriers keep you from drinking from the clear water. You're choosing to struggle alone when freely offered help is available, suffering unnecessarily because receiving feels complicated when actually it could be simple. So how do you practice this fifth way? How do you become the person who jumps into clear lakes instead of standing at the edge, calculating reasons not to? First, notice when resistance arises in the face of genuine kindness. Someone offers help, and you immediately think, "Oh, you don't have to do that," or "I'm fine, really." Someone expresses care, and you deflect with, "It's not a big deal," or change the subject. Someone celebrates you, and you minimize your achievement, or point out everyone else who deserves credit. Just notice these patterns without judgment. You're not bad for having them. They're protective mechanisms you developed for good reasons. But they're also keeping you safe from joy, from love, from the very things you actually want and need. Name what's happening. I'm standing at the clear lake, finding reasons not to jump in. This awareness alone begins to create space between the offer of kindness and your automatic deflection of it. You start seeing the pattern and recognizing you have a choice. You can keep the armor on, or you can take it off. The naming makes the unconscious conscious, and what's conscious can be changed. Second, examine what you're actually protecting yourself from. What's the fear beneath the resistance? If I fully receive this love and they leave, I'll be shattered. That's fear of future loss controlling your present experience. If I accept this help, I'll owe them something I can't repay. That's fear of debt that probably doesn't actually exist. If I let them know me fully and they reject me, I won't recover. That's fear based on past hurt, projected onto present relationship. These fears make sense given your history. Maybe you've been hurt before by people you trusted, Maybe you've been in relationships where kindness came with strings attached. Maybe you grew up learning that receiving meant owing, that dependence was dangerous, that vulnerability led to pain. But here's the question: is this person offering this kindness right now actually threatening? Or are you responding to old fears rather than present reality? Is the lake in front of you actually dangerous? Or are you remembering different water from a different time? This discernment matters because past pain, while real, doesn't have to dictate present choices. Third, test the water. Is it genuinely clear? Not all kindness is pure, and it's wise to check. Signs of genuine kindness include consistency over time, not just when they need something from you. No demands for specific reciprocity or payback. They're genuinely happy when you succeed, not competitive or diminishing. They respect your boundaries when you set them instead of pushing or punishing. They don't keep score or throw their kindness in your face later. If the kindness passes these tests, then it's clear water. The lake is as pure as it looks. Your resistance is the only obstacle between you and complete refreshment. This recognition empowers you because if the only barrier is your own fear, then you have the power to remove it. Fourth, practice jumping in completely. When they offer help, try saying, "Yes, thank you," instead of, "Oh, you don't have to." When they express care, receive it fully. That means so much to me, instead of minimizing. When they celebrate you, accept it openly. Thank you for seeing me, instead of deflecting. This feels vulnerable at first, maybe even terrifying. You're taking off the armor, entering the water without protection. But notice what actually happens when you do this. Most of the time, the feared consequences don't materialize. Instead, you feel the immediate relief of being fully received, fully seen, fully supported. You taste how sweet the water actually is when you stop standing at the edge imagining dangers. Start small if you need to. You don't have to jump into the deepest part of the lake on your first attempt. Maybe you start by simply not deflecting the next compliment they give you. Just say, "Thank you," and let it land. Notice that nothing bad happens when you receive it. Build from there. Each time you receive instead of deflect, you're wading a little deeper into the water, discovering it's safe, discovering it refreshes you. Fifth, be in the water without trying to grasp it. This is subtle but important. When you're swimming in the lake, you don't try to hold the water in your hands. It flows around you, refreshes you, and you can't own it or control it. Same with kindness. Grasping looks like demanding they never change. Promise, you'll always be exactly this way. Making them responsible for your happiness. I can't be okay without you. Trying to control the relationship. You can't have other friends who matter as much as I do. That's trying to hold water, and it just slips through your fingers, causing frustration. Being in it without grasping looks like enjoying completely while it's here, feeling grateful without feeling entitled, being fully present to the gift without demanding guarantees about how long it will last. Swimming freely in the lake, knowing it's nourishing you now, without trying to own the lake or control its future. This practice transforms how you experience kindness in all its forms. You become able to receive genuine love and support fully instead of deflecting it automatically. You stop the exhausting calculation of whether you deserve good things or whether you can adequately repay them. You simply receive what's freely offered with open hands and a grateful heart. And something shifts in the relationships themselves. When you finally let yourself be fully loved, instead of holding love at arm's length, the person offering that love feels received. Their kindness lands instead of bouncing off your armor. The relationship deepens, not because they changed, but because you finally let yourself enter the water that was always available. You also become more genuinely grateful. Not the obligatory thank you that feels like duty, but real gratitude that comes from having received something precious. When you've actually jumped into the clear lake and felt the complete refreshment, gratitude arises naturally. You're not performing gratitude, you're experiencing it. Most importantly, you finally give yourself permission to be loved, to be helped, to be celebrated, to be supported. All beings deserve kindness, not just others, but you too. The clear lake isn't there for everyone else. It's there for you. You're allowed to jump in. You don't have to earn it, or deserve it, or be perfect first. You can receive it exactly as you are, right now, with all your flaws and struggles, and messy humanness. This permission to receive might be the most radical shift of all. Many of us were taught that we have to earn love, prove our worth, become good enough before we deserve care. But the clear lake doesn't ask for credentials. It doesn't require you to be worthy. It's just there, offering refreshment to whoever is willing to enter, regardless of whether they've earned it. The person in the story emerged from that lake renewed and restored. They didn't stand at the edge analyzing whether they were clean enough to enter pure water. They didn't calculate whether they could somehow pay the lake back for refreshing them. They didn't worry about what it would mean if someday they needed water and the lake wasn't there. They simply saw clear, beautiful water and jumped in completely. And the lake did exactly what clear lakes do. It refreshed them totally, asking nothing in return, just being what it was, offering what it had to offer. You deserve this. When someone in your life is the beautiful, clear lake, kind in action, kind in word, kind in heart, you deserve to jump in completely. Take off the armor of unworthiness. Release the suspicion that searches for danger where none exists. Set down the comparison that makes you feel inadequate beside their goodness. Let go of the fear that tries to protect you from future loss by refusing present joy. Just jump in. Let yourself be completely refreshed by kindness that's genuinely offered. Receive love fully, instead of standing at the edge, calculating whether you deserve it. This is what you've been waiting for, what you've needed, what you've maybe thought didn't exist or wasn't available to you. It exists. It's available. It's right there in front of you, clear and pure, and ready to refresh you completely. The only thing between you and that refreshment is the decision to enter the water. The 5 ways are complete now. 5 different people who cause 5 different kinds of pain or offer different kinds of care. 5 different practices for transforming your relationship with anger, with hurt, with love itself. Each one a doorway to freedom when you're ready to walk through it. Jump in. You now have 5 ways to transform the anger that's been burning you. 5 ancient teachings from Shariputra, preserved for over 2,000 years, waiting for this exact moment when you need them. But knowing about them and actually living them are 2 different things. So let's talk about how this works in your real life, starting tonight with the actual pain you're carrying right now. First, you need to know which way fits which situation. This isn't complicated, but it requires honest seeing. Think about the person who's causing you the most suffering right now, the one whose name makes your chest tighten, whose memory disrupts your peace, whose presence in your thoughts steals your rest. Now look clearly at what they actually do and say. If their actions toward you are mostly unkind, unreliable, dismissive, harmful, but occasionally they say something genuinely kind or helpful, you're looking at the first way, the monk and the garbage pile. Their behavior is the refuse. Their rare kind words are the clean cloth. Your practice is to take only what's genuinely useful and leave the rest exactly where it is, with them, not in your heart. This might be your difficult boss who creates constant stress, but occasionally gives feedback that actually helps you grow, or a parent whose actions have been neglectful, but who sometimes expresses love in their limited way. The practice here is discernment, examining each kind word like the monk examined the cloth, taking what's truly clean, leaving the garbage untouched. If their words are harsh, critical, rough, maybe even hurtful, but their actions consistently show care and support, you're looking at the second way, the lake covered with algae. Their delivery is the unpleasant surface. Their demonstrated care is the pure water beneath. Your practice is to push aside the harsh words, to reach the genuine care their actions reveal. This might be a parent who never learned to say, "I love you," but shows up every single time you need them. Or a mentor whose blunt feedback stings, but who invests hours in your development. Or a friend with a sharp tongue who defends you fiercely when it matters. The practice here is responding to the action truth instead of the word harshness, hearing the care beneath the clumsy delivery. If they're almost entirely unkind, actions, words, everything harmful, but you've witnessed one tiny moment of genuine humanity or kindness, you're looking at the third way, the buffalo's footprint. Vast unkindness, with just a drop of kindness in the middle. Your practice is to honor that drop without pretending the surrounding barrenness doesn't exist. This might be someone who's been mostly cruel, but showed one moment of genuine remorse. Or a toxic relationship where 99% was harmful, but 1% revealed actual humanity. The practice here is the most delicate, acknowledging the tiny real kindness without using it to excuse the massive harm, preventing yourself from building demons in your mind while still protecting yourself completely. If they seem entirely without kindness, actions cruel, words cutting, heart apparently devoid of care, and you can find no kindness to acknowledge at all, you're looking at the fourth way, the sick traveler, complete unkindness that feels unforgivable. Your practice is seeing their cruelty as their sickness, their prison, their hell, not because they deserve compassion, but because holding them as demons in your mind destroys your peace. This might be someone who abused you without remorse, who betrayed you fundamentally and showed no regret, who wielded power cruelly and seemed to enjoy it. The practice here is the hardest of all, shifting them in your mind from all-powerful demon to sick human already trapped in consequences of their cruelty. This shift doesn't excuse them, doesn't mean reconciliation, doesn't require you to wish them well. It simply means you stop carrying them as monsters that haunt you and see them instead as sick beings imprisoned by their own sickness. And if they're genuinely kind in every way you can measure, actions caring, words encouraging, heart pure toward you, but you find yourself unable to fully receive their kindness, you're looking at the fifth way, the beautiful clear lake. Complete kindness available, but barriers in your own mind, keeping you from entering the water. Your practice is removing the armor of unworthiness, suspicion, comparison, and fear that keeps you standing at the edge when refreshment is right there. This might be a friend who's been steadfast for years, but you keep minimizing their care. Or a partner who loves you genuinely, but you can't let yourself be fully loved. Or a mentor who invests in you freely, but you can't receive it without calculating debt. The practice here is jumping in completely, receiving kindness fully, letting yourself be loved, accepting support without deflection. Now here's what's important to understand about choosing which way to use. These aren't rigid categories where each person fits only one box forever. The same person might require different ways at different times as your relationship evolves or as you heal. A parent who was the fourth way when you first left home seeing their cruelty as sickness that destroyed their capacity for care, might become the third way years later when they show one genuine moment of remorse. Later still, they might become the second way as you recognize care beneath their still rough words. Eventually, they might even become the first way, where you can take occasional wisdom while leaving harmful patterns untouched. Or you might move in the other direction. Someone who was the fifth way, genuine kindness you were learning to receive fully, might reveal themselves to need the first way instead, as you discover their actions don't match their words. This isn't failure in your practice. It's clear seeing, which is always the foundation of wisdom. Trust your discernment here. You know your situation better than anyone else possibly could. If a way feels right for your situation, use it. If it doesn't fit, try another. The 5 ways are options for your liberation, not rules you must follow in order or obligations you owe to anyone. And here's what Shariputra understood that makes this teaching so profound. The real freedom these practices offer has nothing to do with changing the other person. Nothing at all. They might never change. They might never apologize, never understand what they did, never face consequences, never transform into who you wish they were. Your freedom doesn't depend on any of that. What these practices change is what you hold in your heart, how you carry people in your mind, where you direct your attention when their memory arises. Whether you're imprisoned by anger or liberated by wise seeing. You can practice all 5 ways while maintaining the firmest boundaries imaginable. Taking clean cloth from garbage doesn't mean staying near the garbage pile. You can take what's useful and walk away forever. Clearing algae to reach pure water doesn't mean tolerating harsh words. You can receive the care beneath while asking for gentler delivery or leaving if it doesn't come. Honoring the tiny water in the footprint doesn't mean staying in the desert. You drink carefully and continue your journey away. Seeing someone as the sick traveler doesn't mean becoming their caregiver. You can recognize their sickness from a great distance, safely separated. And jumping into the clear lake doesn't mean drowning in dependence. You can swim freely, be refreshed completely, and still maintain your autonomy. Protection when you need it, openness when it's safe. This is wisdom, not weakness. Boundaries without bitterness, distance without demons, safety without suffering. This is what becomes possible when you practice these 5 ways. The anger you've been carrying transforms not because you've suppressed it or pretended it away, but because you've shifted where your attention rests. This is the heart of Shariputra's teaching, the core insight that makes everything else possible. You cannot always control what others do or say, but you can always choose where you direct your attention. When the difficult boss speaks, you can direct your attention to the rare, helpful feedback or to the constant criticism. Both are there. Which one you focus on determines whether you leave that job bitter or skilled. When the gruff parent calls, you can direct your attention to their harsh words or to their consistent showing up. Both are real. Which one you notice determines whether you experience deprivation or imperfect love. This isn't positive thinking or denial. You're not pretending the garbage doesn't exist, or that algae is pleasant, or that cruelty is acceptable. You're seeing everything clearly and then choosing, consciously, deliberately, where to rest your attention. This choice, this wise direction of attention, is what transforms suffering into freedom. So, your practice, from tonight forward, starts with one simple question: which situation is causing me the most pain right now? Don't try to work on every relationship at once. Don't attempt to transform all your anger simultaneously. Start with the one that hurts most, the one that steals your sleep, the one that makes your chest tighten when their name appears. Got them in mind? Now ask, which of the 5 ways fits this situation? Look honestly at what they actually do and say. Don't make them worse than they are, or better than they are. Just see clearly. Then choose the way that matches the reality you're seeing. Once you've chosen your way, practice shifting your attention exactly as the teaching instructs. If it's the garbage pile, start examining each interaction for clean cloth while leaving refuse untouched. If it's the algae-covered lake, start noticing their actions when their words sting. If it's the buffalo's footprint, honor the tiny kindness without pretending there's more than there is. If it's the sick traveler, begin seeing their cruelty as the sickness that imprisons them. If it's the clear lake, notice when you deflect kindness and practice receiving it fully instead. And then pay attention to what changes. Not in them. They might not change at all. But in you. Notice what happens in your body when you practice these ways. Does your chest feel less tight when you think of them? Do your shoulders drop a little when their name comes up? Does the automatic clench in your jaw soften? These physical changes are signs that the anger is loosening its grip, that you're finding freedom even though nothing external has shifted. Notice what happens to your sleep. Do you lie awake less often replaying what they said or what you should have said? Do the revenge fantasies become less frequent, less vivid, less consuming? Does rest come more easily because you're not carrying the weight of absolute hatred into your bed each night? Notice what happens to your peace. Do moments of joy stop being interrupted by thoughts of them? Can you be present with people you love without their memory poisoning the connection? Does mental space open up for things that actually matter to you because you're no longer consumed by anger? These changes might be subtle at first. You might not even notice them until you look back and realize you haven't thought about that person in 3 days. or that a whole week passed without the familiar rage burning through you. This is the path to freedom, gradual, sometimes almost imperceptible, but absolutely real. And here's the profound shift that happens as you practice these 5 ways. The person who hurt you becomes your teacher. Not intentionally, not because they meant to teach you anything, but because their presence in your life created the conditions for you to learn these practices. Without them, you might never have discovered that you could take clean cloth and leave garbage, that you could see beneath harsh surfaces, that you could honor tiny kindness without being trapped by it, that you could see cruelty as sickness without being destroyed by hatred, that you could receive love fully without armor. They gave you the curriculum, even if they never meant to. The anger they sparked became the fire that illuminated these 5 paths to freedom. This doesn't make what they did okay. It doesn't excuse the harm. It doesn't mean you owe them gratitude for hurting you. It simply means that you've taken the worst thing that happened and transformed it into wisdom you'll carry forever. The fire they started in your chest stops burning you, not because you've extinguished it through force or suppression, but because you've learnt to direct your attention in ways that transform heat into light. The energy that was consuming you becomes the power that frees you. And then you are free. Not someday after they apologize, or after you've done years more work, or after you've achieved some perfect state of enlightenment. Free now, tonight, in this very moment, when you first direct your attention according to these teachings. Free whether they ever change or not. Free whether they ever understand what they did or not. Free whether they ever face consequences or not. Free whether anyone else ever knows your story or validates your pain. Your freedom lives in how you hold them in your heart, not in what happens to them in the world. This is what Shariputra understood when he taught these 5 ways over 2,000 years ago. This is what the Buddha understood when he taught that suffering comes from how we relate to experience, not from experience itself. This is what countless practitioners have discovered as they've walked these paths before you. You're not alone in this practice. Across centuries and continents, people carrying the same burden you carry have found the same freedom you're finding. Some used the first way, some the second, some the third or fourth or fifth. But all of them discovered what you're discovering now, that the key to freedom was never in the other person's hands. It was always in yours, waiting for you to learn where to direct your attention. If it feels right, share with our community how this practice is transforming your experience. Let us know which of the 5 ways you're working with, what's shifting in your heart, what freedom you're finding. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight, the encouragement that helps them take their first step toward freedom. As you rest tonight, know this. The anger that brought you here has served its purpose. It got your attention. It showed you something needed to change. It led you to these ancient teachings that can transform suffering. Now it can begin to release its grip because you have new ways of seeing, new practices for freedom, new paths forward that don't require carrying fire in your chest. The 5 ways are yours now. Clean cloth from garbage piles, pure water beneath algae, careful drinking from tiny footprints, compassion for sick travelers, complete receiving of clear lakes. 5 ancient practices, preserved across millennia, waiting for this moment when you needed them most. You have everything you need to be free. The teachings are complete. The practices are clear. The path is open. All that remains is the choice to walk it, starting tonight with the very pain you're carrying right now. The person who hurt you doesn't control your freedom anymore. The anger doesn't rule your heart anymore. The suffering doesn't define your days anymore. You've learned to direct your attention in ways that transform everything. Rest now. Let these teachings settle into your heart. Tomorrow you'll practice them in your actual life, with real people, in concrete situations. But tonight, just rest in knowing that freedom is possible, that suffering can transform, that the fire can stop burning you. Shariputra's voice has carried across 26 centuries to reach you in this moment. The Buddha's wisdom about suffering and freedom has survived wars and translations and the rise and fall of civilizations to arrive exactly when you need it. This is not accident. This is not coincidence. This is your path to freedom, and it begins right now. The anger you carried here tonight can leave differently than it came, not through force or suppression, but through wise seeing, through skillful attention, through these 5 ways that transform suffering at its root. You are free. The teachings are complete. Your liberation begins now.